the Nissan Z. I'm glad to see another proper sports car rear drive 3-pedal option here. And I was just in that Toyota Supra a couple of weeks ago, which is the direct competitor to this thing. So I'm going to get a good comparison going here, and at the end I'll tell you which one I think is better for you. Let's go ahead and take a look. I've been driving the Z around for about the last week now. Now it is not the 400Z, it is just a Z now, so make sure to correct people if you want to be the fun one at parties. But there is a lot of carryover from the last generation, and Nissan has faced a lot of criticism for that. But the fact of the matter is that this thing probably would not have happened, and it definitely wouldn't have been in the sort of more affordable sports car price point, which, you know, it's tough to say $40,000 to $50,000 is an affordable price point, but it is in 2023 when you consider what you get for this. It was no longer using those VQ series engines like in the 370Z. It's not on the FM platform, it's the RZ34 platform, and it uses the engine from the Infiniti Q60 Red Sport 400. So there is some shared stuff going on there. This one makes 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. A little bit more horsepower than the Supra, a little bit less torque, at least on paper, because, you know, BMW likes to sandbag their numbers a little bit with the B58 motor. So in truth, the Supra might have a little bit more horsepower, but the fact of the matter is they are similar in numbers. This one does weigh about 100 pounds more. Now this here does feel a little bit slower though, which is surprising because, again, that power to weight is pretty similar. The power is available, you know, up through the tech, but it doesn't feel like it's pushing quite as strongly as that Supra did as you move up through the tech. But we do have a 7,000 RPM red line, and you can, second gear gets you to about 70 or 75 before you hit red line. You know, you're not really gonna be up at the top of the tack on regular roads. That's really gonna be saved for track driving. Nissan, in their press materials, really touted this thing as like a connected driver's car for enthusiasts by enthusiasts, and I'm kind of iffy on that one. I mean, they did nail that in a lot of ways, but when you compare this to the Supra feels a lot more driver oriented in general. But where this one excels a little bit more is in the steering. It feels a lot more buttoned up, and it feels heavier, which I really like. You can place the tires just a little bit better than you could in that Supra. Not that the Supra was bad in terms of steering, it was just a little bit less communicative and a little bit lighter. Now, in terms of the gearbox, this thing is nice and tight, just like the Supra was. You know, you take a little bit of muscle to get into gear, which I love. There's no slop going on here. Super tight, feels great. Now, the clutch pedal does have a little bit of a disconnected feel to it, but the Supra did as well. You know, with these modern clutches, it's just kind of the way it goes, but it does have some good weight to it. You know, heavy enough that you get a little bit of feel, a little bit of feedback, and it doesn't feel like these super feather-like clutches like in the Civic Si and a lot of the commuter type cars, but it's not so heavy that it's going to be like a pain in traffic or a pain to daily drive or anything like that. The brakes themselves are very good, and since this one has a performance pack on it, or this one is the performance trim level, the brakes are a little bit bigger than they would be if you're in that sport, the base trim level. And the brakes work really nicely, you know, even when driven in anger, the brakes work great. Now the throttle is kind of another story. It's a little bit frustrating. This one does have a little bit of a lag to the throttle pedal. So, you know, it doesn't really come on until you get deep into it, and it's just a strange feeling. It doesn't bother me a lot on the daily drive, like the sort of regular drive. But it starts to get a little frustrating when you're trying to engage first gear, and it gets really frustrating if you want to heel toe your downshifts or you want to try to rev match your downshifts. Because there's so much delay, it's like you dig deep into the pedal and then a second later your revs spike, and by that point, like, you know, if you're trying to time things, it just is a little bit awkward. Now, the spacing of the pedals is good for heel towing, but it's just that little bit of throttle lag is very frustrating if you're going to try to rev match those downshifts. You do have this S mode button over here, which is your rev matching button. Now at first I didn't think it did anything because I would push the button and nothing would change. It turns out you have to hold that button. It took me about 3 days to figure that out. And the rev matching works really well, no real issues. And you will have to turn that on if you want to use the launch assist, which again is only on the Performance 6MT. There is a launch control on the automatic no matter what trim level you're in, but if you choose the manual transmission, then that is only if you get the performance trim level. You know, they also made the front tires a little wider this year for this generation, and the wheelbase is a little bit longer than the Supras, about 3 inches, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking about, you know, a sports car like this, something that's meant to handle really well, that 3 inches does make a pretty big difference. And it just feels like it's kind of fighting me a little bit on the turn-in, a little bit frustrating. For the suspension here, this does have double wishbone front suspension. As a multi-link rear suspension, they have updated that suspension for this year. And it rides pretty softly, actually, for a car like this, for a sports car. I was actually pretty surprised by it. I've been daily driving this thing for about a week now, like I said, and it's really been a comfortable drive, a lot more comfortable than that Supra was. It is still pretty loud in here, but again, kind of to be expected in a sports car at this price point. This one does have a lot of the same safety features as that Supra had. It's got the lane keep assist and the blind spot monitoring, all that. And just like the Supra, it does stay out of your way for the most part. The blind spot monitoring, they have it inside. Nissan likes to put the indicator inside here, which I really like, and it will beep at you if someone is in your blind spot, but it's not a super harsh beep. And so, you know, for the most part, that stuff all stays out of the way, which is really nice. This one does also have adaptive cruise though, which is something that the Supra does not get. If you get the manual transmission version, you can't even option it, whereas this one, it just comes standard with that manual transmission. Visibility wise, you know, out the back, we do actually have pretty good visibility for something that's like a sports car like this. Usually the back windows are pretty small. The Supra's is definitely smaller. This one feels wider and a little bit taller, which is great, but the visibility out the side, nice long doors just like the Supra. It does feel like there's a little bit more of a blind spot in this, maybe just a smidge, but really not by much at all. Under the hood here, as I mentioned before, no more VQ in this one like we had in the 370. This one is the 3-liter twin turbo 6-cylinder pulled from the Infiniti Q60 Red Sport 400. Makes 400 horsepower, 350 pound-feet of torque. It's going to get you 0 to 60 in about 4.5 seconds with the manual transmission. That's up a little bit from the Supra. The Supra is around 4.2, 4.3, but pretty close. Exterior wise, I love what Nissan has done with this car, which is not something I necessarily would have said about the 350 or the 370. I love that this one has some more hard edges, has some throwback features to it, and it just really is a classy looking sports car that really fits well with the way that it drives. And this one has actually gotten quite a few more looks and comments than a lot of the other cars I've been in, which is interesting because even that Supra, even that Raptor R, you know, those got some looks, some comments, but not quite as many as I've gotten with this one here. Up in the front end here, we got lots of cooling going through here. This part in particular, this grille has been a little bit polarizing for some reason, but I love that there's tons of cooling going through there. We got the sensors. This one does have the parking sensors all around. You do have to watch out for scraping down here. I've scraped a little bit on my driveway a couple of times. It's kind of to be expected with a sports car like this. 4.8 inches of ground clearance. And we've got the LED headlights. I love this round kind of light going on here. I love the design there. And I love that they've got some sort of flat here with the corners to break up the round edges a little bit.
Really nice looking front end, if you ask me. Nice looking profile from the side here. This color is called Passion Red, and we've got the super black top. Not a lot of points for creativity on that black color naming there, but you can get a few different options here with the black roof, without the black roof. Nice bright colors, as a sports car should be. Got about 172-inch overall length, on par with that Supra. 100-inch wheelbase, which is 3 inches longer than the Supra, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it does actually make quite a big difference. 3 inches is a lot when you're talking about a wheelbase. This one's on 19s. These are the Ray's super light forged aluminum wheels. That is because we're in the performance trim, otherwise they would be 18s. And these are wrapped in Bridgestone Potenzas. And again, if we were in the sport trim, then those would be a different set of tires. Got a staggered setup. The front tires are actually wider than last year's, but they're still thinner than the ones back here. We got wider tires in the back, thinner tires in the front. Got your nice Z logo. I love the trim here, the silver trim. You got the mirrors with the integrated turn signals, heated, blind spot monitoring, all that is standard. In the Supra, you had to option the blind spot monitoring. So nice to see that that's standard. Got the push to lock and push to unlock. And these interesting kind of door handles here. That's a carryover from the 370Z. Nice looking car from the side, definitely. And the performance trim also gets you these bigger brakes. So if you see these red brake calipers with the Nissan logo on them, that's a pretty good indicator that this one is the performance trim level. Back end here, nice look here with the silver and the black and the red all mixed together. And of course, we've got these throwback combination tail lights, LED tail lights. I love that they used the inspiration from the 300Z on these tail lights. We got more parking sensors. We got your backup camera. You got the dual exhaust because this is the performance trim. A bit of a diffuser going on. Of course, it is a lift back, just like that Supra. Opens up into plenty of space. Now, if you do want to close this, there's no grab handle, so you got to put your hands on the paint. And speaking of paint, part of the reason that there haven't been a lot of these out on the road is because Nissan has been having some issues with the paint. You can actually see right here in this seam some problems with the paint already. A little bit frustrating to see on a brand new car. You got the little subtle spoiler going on. You can get some racing stripes up here if you want to do that as well. And let's hop inside. Interior wise, let's turn this thing on because I'm sweating all over the place. Got a nice looking interior here when you consider it's a $50,000 sports car. Yes, $50,000 is a lot of money. I'm not going to dispute that. But for a sports car like this in the year 2023, but when you account for inflation and all of that, it's actually a pretty good price here in 2023. Here you've got the really nice leather wrap steering wheel. You do have some hard plastics all around, but you've also got the leather, you've got the suede. Because this is the performance. In the sport, you would just get the cloth. But I do really like the look of this, and if you're not into this sort of red explosion, you can get blue, or if you're in the proto spec, you'll get the yellow accents, or if you want, you can just go straight black. But looking all around, you know, it's just really nice. These seats are a little bit less aggressive than the ones in the Supra. They're a little more comfortable. They're still aggressive enough if you want to drive hard. They'll hold you in place. They're not quite eating into you quite as much, at least if you're not on the super big side. But like I mentioned, really like the steering wheel. There is some gloss black in here. The buttons are pretty cheap, but you do have the adaptive cruise. You've got your infotainment controls. You've got your gauge cluster controls, and this gauge cluster is awesome. I really like this. In the Supra, it was pretty simple. It was that big tack fixed in the middle and then a little bit of information off to the side. This one gives you 3 different modes that you can choose from. I like to just leave it in the sport mode. Get the huge tack right in the middle, your temperatures off to the side, just the important stuff. And then on the left, you have, you can choose from G-force, boost, tire pressure, You can even adjust your upshift indicator, which is kind of cool. But for the most part, that kind of stays out of the way. Just really like the way that they did this gauge cluster. And that doesn't matter which trim you're in, you get that either way. And I love that they have these gauges up here at the top. So you always have your boost, your turbo speed, your voltmeter. Especially having that boost right there is just a pretty cool feature. And it's analog. All these are analog gauges. I really like that they did that. Very cool. Infotainment is down here rather than that tacked on thing that they had in the Supra. So that's a nice touch as well. A 9-inch screen. If you're in the Sport, then you get the 8-inch screen. It does have some gloss black around it, not my favorite. And it is a little bit on the laggy side, but again, when you compare it to the Supra, this is like head and shoulders above that. And it works fine. It works easily enough. This does have the nav built in. This also does have Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, whereas the Supra, it was only CarPlay and that was optional. This one you get both no matter what, which is a pretty big deal for me, having lived with Android Auto. It's just hard to go backwards, and especially if this is going to be your daily driver, your only car, it's just nice to have that. You got real knobs for your volume, your tuning, and if you want to turn the display off, if you like driving at night with the display off, you can do that as well. Nice little touch. This one also has ambient lighting optioned. 450 bucks, you can get some of that ambient lighting. Not really my thing, but you get a color changing footwell light. Interesting, but it is what it is. You've also got the $500 illuminated kick plate with the Z logo. Again, not really my thing, but if you're into that. And we've got the Bose sound system in this one, 8-speaker Bose instead of the 6-speaker Nissan sound system that's in the base. If you get the Supra, you got the 12-speaker JBL sound system is the premium option. You know, even though that one has more speakers, it's not necessarily a more clear sound, and I think that the two systems are about on par. You know, I wouldn't necessarily put one above the other. We got the manual handbrake, always love to see that. You got your heated seats, 2 cup holders, one of them is hidden under here. I don't know how that is useful. This one's not particularly useful for big cups either, because when you're shifting, you bump into that. We got your manual transmission gear shift right here. Love seeing that, of course. Nice, super tight track. 5th is way off to the side for some reason, but 1 through 4 are nice and tight, and then 5th and 6th are like way off to the side. Push down and then over, down to the right. That's my first time seeing that. I know Nissan Infiniti do that. Apparently the S2000, the RX-8. Otherwise, I haven't really seen that push down and then over right before. No wireless charging. We got USBs up here, a little spot for the phone. You got your S mode, that is your rev matching, and that is only in the performance trim level. That is not going to be in the base trim level. You have to turn that on if you want to use launch control. Push that button, hold it down till your little S shows up. Hold the clutch all the way down, hold the gas all the way down, and then basically just dump the clutch. You know, overall, really nicely done interior. So much nicer than the Supra. It's just a way nicer place to be.
At the end of the day, as with any car, it kind of comes down to what you're going to use it for, what your needs are, what your tolerance level is for different things. You know, if this is going to be your weekend fun car and your track car, something that you're really only going to drive hard, you just want something that makes you want to go drive, the Supra wins it for me in that situation. You know, that was one, every time I got out, I wanted to get back in. Every time I drove it, I liked it a little bit more than I did the previous time. But if you're talking about a daily driver, something you're gonna cruise around in, something maybe you take some road trips, I mean, it's your only car, this makes a much more compelling argument in that case. The ride quality is a lot softer. You get nicer features. The interior is head and shoulders above the Supra. The seats are a little bit less aggressive. You know, it's just, generally speaking, this car is just a nicer place to be. It's just the easier daily driver, easier cruiser. And when you want to drive it in anger, you can if you want to push on it. want to beat on it a little bit, you can do that as well. It just has those little things that just, you know, the inputs aren't quite as tight, quite as buttoned up in general as with the Supra. Can tune those things, of course, but when we're talking stock for stock, the Supra is just the better driver's car. This is the better daily driver. As always, thanks for watching. Make sure to hit all the YouTube buttons, you know, subscribe and stick around if you want to see what I'm driving next. But it's the like and the share that really, you know, keep me getting into more cars, keep this channel going. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.